Hello and welcome to another Tech Talk with Luxpower. I'm your host Andy, and today we're going to be discussing the all new features on the SNA 5000. Now, some of you have already taken delivery of these machines, so let's have a look at the unboxing and see what the differences are between the new one and the old one. There are some significant changes, one being an obvious inclusion of a CT clamp, and the other one being a change in the serial number, which denotes the machine with CT and one without. So let's have a look. 5 kilowatt SNA, the boxing is exactly the same, but how are you going to know the difference? Because if you have a look at the serial number here, you'll see that the description is exactly the same, but if we zoom in on the serial number, you'll see that the serial number starts with the year of manufacture, which is 2025, that's week 12. But significantly here, we will have a V followed by a series of numbers, and that particularly means that it's the new model which you guys have noticed. So let's unbox it and see what's different inside. Okay, so here we're unboxing it. The machine looks exactly the same, but the only significant difference is the inclusion of a CT clamp. So this CT comes standard with the machines that are identified by the V in the serial number, which means that the SNA 5, the Eco Hybrid, now has the added feature of being able to use the smart load port for either gen in, AC coupling, or an auxiliary output. And I will go through the description with you in a second. Okay, now we have the machine connected up to our test bench, and I'm going to show you what the differences are. Here we have a CT clamp, which is now connected to our live incoming, and that comes all the way down to the machine, and it's connected to the port here. So remember previously, the older version of the SNA even though it had a vacant port here, it was never marked or screen printed with a CT there, but now we have the new CT edition. And please make sure that when you use a CT clamp, it's got to be on the machine with a serial number that here you will see the serial number has a V in it, right? You see that? It's got the V in it, so that means it can work with a CT. So we've got the CT plugged in at the CT port, and the power goes, it's connected to the live incoming. Right, so here on the board, I have a list of the differences, or a comparison of the standard version SNA 5000 and also the new version with the CT. So the first thing you'll notice obviously is that the serial numbers on the newer versions, they will start with a 5. See, both they start with a 5, so the 5 denotes that it was manufactured in 2025. If your inverter starts with a 4, it was manufactured in 24, 3, 23, and so on, you get the drift. Then the second mark here, which is the one that I've marked in blue, that is the week of manufacture. So this one, if it's a 512, as an example, it was manufactured in the year 2025 in week 12. And then all of our serial numbers have 10 digits. The standard version will be 5, an example, say 12 for week 12, and it will be followed by 7 digits. The new version will also be a 10-digit number, but it will be intersected with a V around about here. So you'll have V0001, which means that it will be the first one off the production line with the CT. Right, so let's just tick that off, and we understand that. What's new in the SNA 5 that's already common across all our other machines, which is the EcoBeast 6, the SNA 6000, as well as the whole of the LXP range. Smart load function, it has the smart load function. AC coupling, it has that as well. Generator input, which means that the gen input is used as a smart load port, which can be used for any one of these 3 functions here. It has that. And also, quite a key thing is it's got built-in neutral and potential earth bond. Right. So let's compare that to the older machine. Smart load, cannot do. Why can't it do it? Because it doesn't have the CT. AC coupling, cannot do, no CT. Gen input, it can do that. It always has been able to do that. And we've on the machines that were manufactured prior to the 5 series and even the 4, they have a built-in CT internally on the gen input port. And neutral earth bonding, cannot do. So let's do a recap. Smart load function, and I'm going to describe that to you in a second. AC coupling, yes. Gen input, which you can use the gen input for either smart load, AC coupling, or as an input port. All right, so let's recap with using the generator port on your machine. You can have it set under the settings, and you can only access this on the web portal. You can run it as a smart load port, which means that it's an auxiliary out, right? So power will flow out of the machine. You can enable it as an AC couple, which means that you will receive power from a grid-tied inverter. Or you can set it as a gen input, which also means that it will expect power in from a generator. All right, so I'm going to go through all of these scenarios with you in particular as we continue with the training. But this is just to denote how the smart load works with the new version CT, the new version SNA 5. So smart load, AC couple, gen input, and the all-important, the built-in neutral and potential earth bond. And that's obviously when the grid goes out, you can enable it. And what it does then is it'll just bond neutral and earth to give you a 0 floating voltage between your neutral and earth. All right, so here we have a basic schematic of how the smart load function will work as an auxiliary output. Remember, we are using the generator input port as a smart load or an auxiliary output. And what we're going to do is we're going to, in the settings page, which is something that I'm going to go through with you a little bit later, we will enable the smart load function. And there's a number of things that we need to do. Right, so number one, remember that the machine comes with a CT, and ideally you're going to be putting the CT around about there on your line, on your schematic, so that the CT can measure this is grid, right? So there's your earth, the grid comes in, it goes to the NE or the non-essential loads, and then it comes through a breaker to the inverter input. And you ideally, if it's possible when you're doing the installation, you want to be putting your CT around about here, because what can happen is that power can come from the PV in, from the battery, and that can be in or out, and then it could supply loads obviously to your essential loads. You can have power going to the auxiliary with the grid on, and you can also have power going in that direction and in that direction from solar and from battery without going there. That's possible with the new inclusion of the CT clamp. But let's look at the auxiliary. So if we're going to be using the smart load port or the gen port as a smart load port, what happens is you have two things that you have to do. So first of all, you have to set, let's put it over here, you're going to have to set your grid always on or off. So in other words, you can enable that. And the other thing you need to do is you need to set your PV start power, and you need to set your battery, the start flag, and the stop flag. And I call them flags because they are indications of when the system must use this. So let's just go ahead and say, imagine for a second that the grid is off. So then we've got the circuit breaker open. If we've enabled if we've said grid always on, then if the grid was on, then power will come from the grid and go to the non-essentials, it'll come into the inverter, it'll go to the essential side, and it'll also come to the auxiliary side. So here you might have a geyser, you might have your pool pump here, or something like that. You can decide what loads you put. So if you enable grid always on, then the grid power will come into the inverter, it'll go to the essential loads and to the auxiliary loads. If you say grid off, what it will then do is, when the grid is on, then no power will come here. The power will only go there, come to the inverter and go to the essential loads. Only when the grid fails, in load shedding or if your circuit breaker goes off, then it will feed power to here. Right, so that's in the grid off position. Only when the grid goes off, the power will come here. And when the grid goes off, it's going to look at this criteria here. It'll want to know at which level must the PV be to be able to supply power here. And you can set that to 0. It also needs to know what is your stop SOC and what is the start SOC. So for instance, if you say that your battery level, the lowest level is 20% and the stop value is 30%, what it'll then do is, if there's PV or no PV in a grid off situation, it's going to discharge the battery, convert it from DC to AC, it'll come to the essential loads and it'll go to the auxiliary load, right, or to the smart load. And the minute the battery value drops to this SOC minus 1%, in other words, in this case it'll be 19, then that will close. PV will then come in at the same time, obviously, or if there's no PV, it will just wait, it will supply here and it'll wait for the grid to come back on again, or for PV to come back on again, and then it will start charging the battery, right? So power goes that way, it will do that, it will also supply the essential load, it will charge the battery, and when the battery gets to this value here, which is 30%, then this gate will open again, all right? And it will remain open until it gets to that value minus 1, which is 19, and then it'll shut again. And it'll do this a number of times during the day or until the grid stabilizes. So that's typically how the smart load function works with this feature. If you select to have the grid always on, then both of these will get power in an on-grid and in an off-grid situation. If you select it off, then only the essentials will get power when the grid is on, but both of them will get power when the grid is off, and it will then switch to this section here and look for the start and the stop flags on the back. Right, let's recap. And on this particular board, I've got 3 machines up here. I've got the old SNA. I've got the new SNA with V in the serial number like we discussed earlier on, and I've got the SNA 6000. I'll explain to you why I've got that here. So the old version, or the phasing out version of the SNA 5000, doesn't have a smart load port. Let's get the right thing here. It cannot smart load because it doesn't have a CT. It cannot AC couple because it doesn't have a CT. It can do a generator, and it cannot do a neutral potential earth bond. It doesn't have a built-in relay, but I will also confirm that for you. So the new SNA 5000 can do the smart load function, it can do an AC coupling function, it's obviously got the generator function, and it's got the neutral earth bond relay. All right, let's put relay there. And in the SNA 6000, which we introduced, I think it was in the middle of last year, it's got all of these features, as does the whole LXP range. But the reason why I put that up there is because we do have questions from customers with regards to this. And I want to know, if I have an old SNA 5000 and I buy the new one with a V in the serial number, can I parallel them? So for parallel to these two, Let's put a P there for parallel. Yes, you can. You can parallel them. But what happens when you parallel them is that this machine will lose all of these functions. It'll keep that function. I'm not so sure about that one, but it will definitely lose the smart load and definitely lose the AC coupling function, because the parallel scenario or the environment that you put it into is limited. So it will always go back to the lowest form of the machine in the parallel series, right? So if you have an older version machine and you're going to parallel it with a new one, it's possible, but you must remember that you are limited to the older system functionality. Then we've had this question: is it possible to parallel a new version SNA 5000 with the old or the SNA 6 that we introduced last year? That's a 100% definite no. You cannot do that for obvious reasons. So please don't create a parallel there, but here you can with limitations. If you do have an old system with a 6000 and you want to put in a new 5, it is possible, but then you've got to build two completely separate systems. And the reason why is because the outputs are different, the load carrying capacities are different, there's a number of different things, and just from a safety aspect, we cannot allow the paralleling of that to go, right? So that's the end of the video for this particular introduction of the SNA 5000, the V series with the CT. They are already in stock with our distributors, all of our distributors around the country. The older version is also still in stock, and that's particularly if you are going to be expanding on a customer's installation, then rather just go for the older one. But if you're doing new installations, check on the stock availability of the V version. And yeah, we can't wait to see your videos. Don't forget to take pictures, take videos, subscribe to our installer incentive program, and post your videos on Facebook, on Instagram, and on any other social media that you can think of, and you can tag us in it.